A New Year's resolution is bad self-help. Let me explain that. Bad self-help is all about methods. It's concerned with giving you a new way of doing something that is supposed to change you. Are you tired of not being productive? Well, it's because you haven't made enough to-do list, and because you haven't purchased a desk organizer, and it's because you haven't started a dream journal. Are you tired of not being able to draw? It's because you haven't done this set of 30-day drawings where each day you do this specific training in perspective and figures and objects and so on, and that's the right recipe to make you change. Are you tired of not being healthy? That's because you don't eat a dandelion once a week, and you haven't replaced gluten with the leftover shells of sunflower seeds, but don't eat the actual seeds. The oil is poison. Self-help is a method recipe. You do these things, and as a result, you are changed. New Year's resolutions use the same philosophy, but somehow with even less coherence, because we set up for ourselves a series of rote, semi-ritualistic things that we can do. Like, I'm going to draw every day. I'm going to generate 2 comic pages a week. But since the goals that we're coming up with are designed by us, typically in a field in which we're not an expert, we're even less qualified to put something together that will cause us to change. And it is fundamentally about change. There's something we don't like about the way that we are by nature, and we want it to change. And don't worry, this is not the moment where I'm going to tell you that you're perfect just the way that you are. That's the other side of bad self-help, unquestioning affirmation. Obviously, both you and I are rife with flaws. We are bad at doing things that require a lot of skill, and by nature we are selfish and ungenerous and ungrateful. Being generous, humble, grateful, and skilled are things that come about by change. Those are not endemic aspects of our being. Now, these 2 sides of bad self-help that I've given you might sound as though that they're self-contradictory. One says that there's nothing to change about you, and one gives you a list of things you can do in order to change. But they are completely knit together. The underlying message is this: there's nothing wrong with you. It's just the way that you've been doing things that is flawed. But the reality is quite different. Human beings change their behaviors only after they have changed their thinking first. Now, there's a caveat to add to that when you're in a situation where there's a lot of external pressures on you, like teachers, leaders, religious tenets, they apply pressure on you that will mold you into something where then, through the process of doing, you now see the value and have had your thinking changed. Like in Karate Kid, where he does the wax on and the wax off, but without Mr. Miyagi there to make you do those things and then to reveal the purpose of what those things are, it doesn't really work. In fact, how can you even know that you have landed upon the correct activities that will bring about the change that is desired? This is the problem that New Year's resolutions have. They are entirely self-directed, and so you have to play the role of the student who is doing something without understanding why, and the teacher who is supposed to understand why and be in the process of helping the student discover this. Really doesn't work by yourself. So here is the alternative. If you want to see yourself become an artist, a painter, an illustrator, a sculptor, a bookbinder, in the next year, you have to change your thinking before you change your behavior. The reality is that you're not going to bring art meaningfully into your life without a strong conviction as to its importance. You're not going to work a full-time job and then come home for 3 or 4 hours of drawing afterwards. Or if you're like me and you can't stay up late anymore, you're not going to get up at 5 a.m. and work for hours before you go into work. You're not going to do that because you don't yet believe that art has that much intrinsic value. And I know this because if you did, you wouldn't be waiting around for the start of the year anyway to act on what you believe to be true. So if you're somebody who wants to get into art in the coming year, don't give yourself specific goals. If you're new to this, you don't yet know good goals to give yourself. You'll set down a really strict calendar. You'll try to follow it without really understanding why, other than that you arbitrarily set it up yourself. Then you'll get discouraged, and you'll probably give up very quickly, because that's what we tend to do with these kinds of things, where there's no conviction, just strict guidelines. Change your thinking, and the behavior will grow naturally out of your belief. So set a broader goal. Make this the year where you set out to understand why art is meaningful. During the spare time that comes up throughout your day, ask yourself the big questions about art. Why have humans made art in every culture throughout history? If beauty is subjective, why is it so consistent across time and history and region and language? How is it possible for me to look at art from a completely different time, culture, language, and region from my own and find myself moved by it without even understanding all of its context? Be on the lookout for books to read. Draw things in your spare time. Make things in your spare time. But don't be so specific. Make it a year of exploration of the big questions that need to be answered about art for you to believe in its value. One of two things is going to happen. Either you'll find that you really aren't that interested in it, and you'll probably then be able to let it slide from your goals with very little grief. Or by all of this thought and exploration, you will start to build a genuine conviction that art is fundamentally good. You'll have a change in your thinking that leads to a resolute belief in the intrinsic good of art. And then you'll find yourself looking for ways to integrate it into your life without bothering to wait for the start of a new calendar. Because when you have a conviction that something is true, you're much more likely to act as though it is true. A conviction of the truth of something is a much more powerful motivator to action than a simple desire for something. Desire is a weak motivator when it comes to anything that is not just our basic appetites. And art is not like our basic appetites. It requires us to suffer a little bit for its sake. And only a conviction of the truth of something will make it possible for you to suffer for its sake. We are not born knowing what is good and what is worthy. That's something that we have to learn. We have to go searching, and no matter how often somebody will tell us that something is good and worthy, we never really believe it until we encounter that for ourselves. I can assure you that art is worthy and it is good, but devote this year to encountering that answer for yourself, and then the new behaviors that you want to see will grow out of that conviction. I hope you have a wonderful new year. Make it a year of learning what is good and wholesome and worthy about art. And I will see you on the other side.